I moved to the quiet Devon village of Brantford Spoke almost 20 years ago, seeing the slow rhythm of country life. Our lane was edged with fields of cows and wildflower hedges, and the only sounds at dusk were church bells and the wind in oak trees. I never imagined how this peaceful place could have such sorrow and solace. My neighbor, an elderly widower named Henry Thompson, had lived alone ever since his wife Eliza passed. When I first met him, he was a silent figure sitting on the garden bench, watching the last light fade over the hedgerows. It was clear he was still grieving, even years later. In the early evenings after work, I would stop by his cottage on the way home, and we'd share a pot of tea. He was a large man with a gentle voice and a warm smile that showed he cared. Henry would talk about his days quietly and listen intently to me. He'd often ask about my family and grandchildren, and I teased that he should have his own by now. As the seasons passed, he told me stories of Eliza with the fondest recollections. She had been a school teacher with kind brown eyes and a laugh that would fill the room. I could see how deeply he missed her. He sometimes smiled through tears when he spoke of her. One afternoon, as rain pattered on the roof, Henry admitted softly, "It's like hearing Eliza in the kitchen after she's gone. I keep waiting for her to call me for supper." He would always laugh softly at himself, patting the empty seat beside him. I grew to consider Henry a friend. When he started calling me by my first name, Sam, I knew how much comfort those visits gave him. 2 years after his wife's passing, Henry quietly told me he had visited the local animal shelter. There, among many hopeful faces, was a golden retriever puppy with soft eyes who immediately crawled onto his lap. He named her Freya on the spot. From that day, Freya became the spark that lit up Henry's world. Freya had a thick golden coat and boundless energy. She knew the roads and lanes of Brantford Spoke like the back of her paw. Children in the village would wave at them as they passed on their walks, and the local postman always paused to say hello. Henry would grin proudly, saying, "She's my guardian, you see." And indeed, she protected him with her loyalty, nudging his arm if he looked troubled. I watched Henry's world brighten the day Freya arrived. In the mornings he would make tea. Freya would stand expectantly by his side. On cold winter nights, she settled at his feet by the fire. Henry would wink at me over her head, proud and happy, saying she's been a real blessing. Sam, I believed it. Everyone in the village came to love Freya as much as they loved Henry. It was last autumn when I first saw Henry without Freya by his side. I knocked on his door one morning and found the world inside painfully silent. Freya's leash still lay coiled by the back door, and a half-empty water bowl was on the floor. Henry sat at his kitchen table, staring down at the red tea stains on his mug. He whispered, "I'm sorry. She's gone." It was as if the air left the room. Freya had passed in her sleep the night before, quietly and without pain, on the rug by the hearth. Henry had held her fur in his hands as she took her last breath. I helped him bury her under the rowan tree in the back garden, her favorite spot to watch sunrises. The morning light fell gently on the place where we laid her to rest. Henry's grief was immediate and profound. The spark in his eyes that Freya had lit vanished. He hardly spoke for days. One night, I tried to cook him dinner and took him to the Red Lion pub. He barely ate and just stared into the fire. That's when I asked him quietly, "Have you eaten today, Harry?" He replied softly, "I can't hear her barking for breakfast anymore." He looked lost. We pinned one of Freya's squeaky toys on the kitchen wall. Each time Henry looked at it, he would smile sadly. He would tell me how Freya would have loved it. We left things unchanged. Freya's empty bed by the stove, her leash on the rack. Henry said it was all he had left of her. It reminded me of his own words. If anyone understood what it meant to lose someone, it was him. In the weeks that followed, I began to notice small uncanny things. Henry insisted it was only coincidence, but I thought otherwise. Late at night, I'd hear the front door click shut on its own, as if Freya had slipped out to pee and came back. The other day, I saw that Freya's blanket had moved from the armchair to the hearth from one evening to the next, although I thought no one else had entered. The echoes of Freya were everywhere Henry had trained her to be. Henry told me one evening that he heard Freya's faint bark outside his window around midnight. He was brushing his teeth and paused, listening for a moment. A tiny distant wolf drifted through the glass. He said it was so clear it made his heart skip a beat, and then he wept quietly. Another time, when I stepped inside his front porch, I caught Freya's familiar shampoo scent on my coat. The smell filled the small hall. I hadn't washed the coat in weeks. For a moment, I was sure she had nuzzled against me at the door. Henry just washed my face. She's here, I told him, everywhere she was. Once, as the sun was setting, Henry pointed into the backfield through the mist and said he thought he saw Freya waiting by the gates. I squinted across the twilight. All I saw was fog. There between these oak trees, he kept saying. I convinced him to come inside into the warm lamplight, but he said softly, "She won't run away now, will she?" Not again. Each time something strange happened, Henry would smile through tears and mutter, "Not you too, you old hound." In those quiet moments, it felt like Freya's spirit was gently letting him know she hadn't forgotten him. The house was less lonely because of those subtle signs, and I think it gave him some comfort to believe she remained nearby. He was not really alone. It wasn't long after that Henry grew slowly weaker. The light in his eyes had dimmed, but I thought it was Freya's memory that kept him going. One crisp November afternoon, I found him on the porch in a light coat, sitting as if waiting for Freya to come in our supper. He smiled when he saw me and nodded. "Just listening," he said softly. We spent that evening drinking tea by the fire. He told me tales of his youth and held Freya's old collar in his hands. Told him to eat something, but he just pushed a biscuit around his plate for a long while. Then he said, "Sam, if I go, I hope I can see Freya again. I hope we can find each other out there." I nodded, choking up, not knowing what to say. One night not long after, he passed quietly in his sleep. The room was still, only the ticking of the clock and the distant church chimes marking time. Henry's face was peaceful, a faint smile on his lips. When I gently moved his hand, Freya's leather collar slipped out from between his fingers. I picked it up and read the name Freya, then buried my face in Henry's coat. It smelled faintly of pine and something soft. Maybe her scent was woven in. Later at the small church under the rowan tree, we laid Henry to rest beside Eliza, and Freya's resting place was only a few steps away. I told the clergyman Henry always kept Freya's toy in his pocket. She carried it with her always. The morning was still golden, as if the whole village paused for a moment. I felt warm whispers of breeze and imagined it was Freya nuzzling Henry's cheek. It gave me an odd comfort. Years have passed, but Brentford's spoke still holds them both. I visit the cottage often. Ivy curls over the porch where Henry used to greet me, and the hydrogenous bloom each summer just as brightly as they did then. Sometimes I bring fresh flowers to the rowan tree where they're buried. When I'm near the place where Freya lies, I swear I see a golden light moving under the leaves. Late one spring as dusk fell, I lit a candle by the kitchen window. The night was still. I poured tea into my favorite china cup. Then I heard the faintest scratching at the door, as if someone was begging to be let in for warmth. For a moment my heart leapt. I opened the door and found only the empty lane under the stars. I could have swore I saw a pair of shining eyes vanish into the dark. Branford Spoke may have kept its quiet ways, but I sometimes feel something else lives there. Something gentle lingers in the air. The way the light shifts at dusk, the way the gate swings with the gentlest breeze. In those small things, I feel their presence. I like to think that somewhere beyond the meadows, Henry and Freya walk together again in peace. In the silence of the Devon nights, I sometimes swear I catch the echo of a soft paw pad on gravel, or the murmur of a kind old voice in the wind.